Okay, welcome. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Can you all hear me? I think this mic is pretty loud. Okay, great.
Just keep it quiet down more.
Thank you. Okay. Well, the first thing I want to do is thank Diane for setting up this excellent deal for the New England Law Library Consortium members. Thanks, Diane. Okay. And for my talk today, in case anyone's not sure what's up for this talk, I'm going to be talking about some studies that I did basically a year and a half ago on search engines, which is sort of ancient history at this point with search engines. And I did some update studies. So I'm going to talk about some of the trends that I saw with the new studies. And then, if there's time, I've made sort of more slides than I'll be able to talk about today. So I'd like it to be more discussion. So if we have to break up and go into questions, that would be good too. Hey, John. And then I'm going to try to talk about just some general trends that I've noticed with search engines, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how they affect legal researchers specifically. I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. It's the fanciest classroom I've ever been in. It's really nice. Let's see. Image showing. Or not. Computer, show image. Okay, it's just taking a second. Okay. So basically, the reason that I started these studies is that a couple of years ago, I noticed, I'm a reference librarian, and I noticed that almost all the reference libraries, it's still not on? Is there anybody here who's a techie person who can help me with my screen? Actually, someone was just here from Suffolk and said, are you all set? And I said, yeah.
Let me see if I can get something.
Are you going from projector or from electric?
It's just from the built-in. Computer, show image, projection screen down, view teaching station. Viewing teacher station. Oh, thank you. This is definitely the classroom to have problems with, all these techie people around. Okay, so basically what happened is I noticed that we were all using different search engines, and that I found myself using search engines as much as I was using the commercial databases, Lexis and Westlaw. They were just becoming an absolute necessary tool. And also at that time, I don't know if you remember, but the Lee and Giles studies came out that were saying that 32% of the web is indexed, and that's just the visible web. So a lot of the useful stuff out there may not be findable by search engines. So I wanted to see if that more or less proved to be true for legal information on the web. And that's where it got started. Okay. So the first type of searching that I tried to take a look at is what I'm calling it known item searching. I find in my reference work that more often than not, I'm not really looking for information on a topic. I'm looking for a specific page that I'm absolutely sure exists. So an agency, an organization, a department, a code, a set of rules, you get the picture. So that's sort of the study that I set up. Basically, I picked 15 engines, and I included the legal search engines. Part of this was to see if these legal search engines, FindLaw and Law Crawler and Law Runner, could really stack up against the major search engines. So I selected 15. I picked 50 known items, and I looked to see if the known item was someplace in the top 20 results. Now, I did score it sort of weighted heavily towards the top 10, but basically that was a search. I used default search screens, not too many fancy features, a few phrase searches, and that was about it. Okay, and so here was the results of that initial sort of known item searching. You have the majors that sort of came out on top: Yahoo, Hotbot, GoTo, Google. I should mention Google at that time had just come out of beta, so this is going back a while. And then you'll notice that the law engines are way at the bottom there. That kind of surprised me. I thought they'd actually do a little better than that, but they didn't perform well at all. And so some observations that I made at that time were basically that the engines in general had done pretty well in finding these 50 known items. That, based on those studies saying that information wasn't indexed and this and that, I was expecting that, maybe half of them wouldn't be found at all. But in fact, most of them were found, let's see, they were found in the top 20 results of these 15 engines a little more than half the time. So that was pretty good. Oh, I'll mention, these slides are going to be available on the CALI website, I think within a couple of weeks. If anybody wants them sooner, actually I have a couple of extra discs with them, but if you just email me, I'll leave my cards out. And you can email me, and maybe we can stash it secretly on one of the Harvard servers. Although I think...
And you may not be able to do that, because
I think,
you may copyright, you may have...
Oh, because it's CALI? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll wait. So they'll be at the CALI room full of lawyers, too. Okay. Wow.
And I'm not a lawyer, and I'm telling you this.
Okay, so moving on. Okay, so that was ancient history, really, because that was going back almost 2 years. So when I decided to give this talk, I thought I'd better just take a quick look and see if things had changed drastically or what was going on out there. I stuck with 15 engines, and again, I chose them in the same way, which was just basically by, I looked at Nielsen Net Ratings and Media Metrics, these companies that rank web properties, and then also Search Engine Showdown, Search Engine Watch, and I just saw, who people were talking about in terms of the big major engines. Also, I left in the 2 legal engines, and 3 of the search engines that I'd used last time were now defunct or done, so I selected 3 new ones. I'll show you which ones they were. And this time I didn't do 50. That was just mostly a time constraint. I selected 25 items, but basically the same kinds of things: organizations, courts, rules, reports, that kind of stuff. And this time I only looked at the top 10 results, because really, when I search, I find if it's not in those first 5, that's it, I'm done, I'm out of there. So I think some people refer to that as above the fold searching. So, okay. Now, of course, my luck being what it is, I finished these searches on June 2nd. And on June 8th, LawCrawler has this big new release. I was like, oh my goodness. Okay, and then also, interestingly enough, I went back at that time and I checked LawRunner, and that had also been significantly revamped. So, yeah, so such is life with search engines. And so I actually reran the searches on LawCrawler and LawRunner a few weeks after I had finished all these sample searches. I thought it wouldn't be fair not to reflect the improvements that they'd made. So, okay, so what happens? There's the list of these 25 searches. 4 points is the item in the first 5 results. And I think you'll notice right away that these scores are unbelievably high. I was shocked. It was almost embarrassing as I was telling it. I was like, they're all finding everything in their top 5 results. So I thought that was really interesting. So certainly their actual performance in locating this stuff basically by title, they're all dead on. I mean, look at that. The spread of scoring is very small. Google and AltaVista, Lycos was a surprise. I don't know. I don't think of that as a top engine, but did quite well. LawRunner. Now that also surprised me. LawRunner is sort of changing. I'm going to talk about this in a little while, but it basically searches the AltaVista database, and then it sort of culls out the legal pages, much like LawCrawler now searches the Google database and culls out the legal pages. So basically, the upshot of that was that they all did well, and if you have some specific item that's law-related on the web, there's almost no need to bookmark it. You just stick it in by title, and I don't know if this has been your experience. I mean, I knew that they found things well, but I didn't realize they were all doing this well. The 3 engines that had disappeared since last time, Go had disappeared, which was the InfoSeek one, which we probably all remember was one of those good human-powered directory ones. Snap went too, and I really like Snap. Snap was the one that was bought by NBC. I don't know if you remember that. And then WebCrawler, that wasn't a high-ranking engine. Okay. I added Ask Jeeves, which I hate, and it did okay. It didn't do that great. It's like ads and frames. It's terrible. But it's heavily used. Ask Jeeves is a heavily used engine by the public. I1. Has anyone used I1? This is new. This thing wasn't even around 2 years ago. And I noticed on Nielsen Net Ratings, and it's a highly used engine. And it's one of these ones, actually, I'm going to stop and show it to you for a second. It's about the most crass, like, check it out, register now. It's a rewards-based engine, which basically means, every time you search, you get points to win, and it's interesting. This is a new kind of financing mechanism. It's sort of interesting. Once you register, it's like, hi, Deanna, click this lottery number. It's kind of funny. So I1 is out there, and the rewards-based engines, which is what they call themselves, I think we're going to probably see a few more of those popping up. Sort of interesting. Okay, so those were the last observations I was going to make about known item searching. Basically, as I said, known item searching has improved tremendously. My guess is that part of that is based on many of them licensing the Google technology or borrowing the concepts in Google technology, which is that anchor text reference. I'll just explain that really quickly. Basically, the premise for anchor text reference ranking is that the URL underlying the text of the link, so IRS tax forms, the URL underlying that link has some relevance to that phrase. And if 50 libraries or 50 places link to IRS tax forms using that URL, any searcher that types an IRS tax form should get that URL as their top hit. And that's something that I'm pretty sure that Google started and that has now been borrowed by just about everybody. Let's see, what else do I want to mention? I think that's about it. Okay, yeah, I mentioned this, that the first time that they had found these items a little more than half the time, and now they're finding them 82% of the time. Okay, that's it. Done. Okay, the only snags that I tended to see, the engines that stressed their human-powered directory sites first tended to have a harder time with this known item searching. LookSmart and Yahoo both performed pretty poorly. There are still some kinds of pages that I think that search engines are having trouble sort of finding right away. Pages whose titles are in a graphic. It's surprising how many pages still do this, because it's sort of a no-no, and everyone's known it's been a no-no for a long time. But like one of my searches was for some journals, like the Public Contract Law Journal, and every search engine got its style guide in the top hit, but none of them found the top page, and I was like, what's going on with that? And of course, the title was in a graphic. Pages and frames. They can certainly find those pages, and they can index them, and they'll serve them back to you. But many of the engines will return those pages without the accompanying frames. So consequently, you lose all the navigation, you lose all context. So that's still going on out there. What else? Language choice introductions. When you hit a site and it's like, do you want English, French, German, whatever. It seems, I don't understand why that would give them pause. Underneath that is some static page in English, but for some reason they had a slightly harder time finding pages with language choice introductions. And of course, pages that have moved recently. But those are pretty much the only snags. And I'll mention that when I was doing these searches, I was pretty much searching by proper title. So for instance, I didn't say main state code. I tried to say main revised statutes. And I think that was another reason that they all work so well, because I was sort of throwing them off. But not all the things that I searched for were really that basic. Some of, like Texas Attorney General open records letter rulings, and they all found it. So that was sort of interesting. Okay, so that was known item searching, which I went through really quickly because it started a little late and I want to let everyone go for lunch. But does anybody have any questions about known item stuff? It's pretty straightforward. Okay, moving on. Relevancy. About a year and a half ago also, it was more of an afterthought that I decided to take a look at the relevance of results for legal topic queries. As I said, it's not a type of searching I do very much. And also, I kind of assumed that the performance would mirror what I had found for the known item searching. That is, a good search engine is going to do well in relevancy as well. And it's interesting because it turned out that that wasn't the case. Basically, I designed a little mini study. It was just 10 engines, 10 topics, and I scored the top 10 results. pretty simple. And for those topics I tried to choose things that legal researchers may actually use the web for. So my article was really speaking a little more to the professional legal research community, slightly more so than the public. But at any rate. Okay, so the first time I did the relevancy study, this was the scoring. So scores aren't too high. Google, of course, is up there. And LawCrawler and LawRunner, the two legal engines that had performed so badly for known item searching, are now, they've shot to the top, which I thought was kind of interesting. I didn't expect that, actually.
This is before they did the revise?
Yeah, this is way before.
Okay.
So this list is reflecting the performance from basically a year and a half ago. So this is the thing that's in the article that I wrote. Okay. So, few observations at that time were that the best ones to use were Google and maybe the legal engines if you're looking for information on a topic. That the legal engines surprisingly performed well, better for this than for known item searching. But overall, the results weren't really that relevant. It's hard to really give a percentage. I think I tried to, but the way I scored it, let's say it's about a third relevant. I averaged about 35%. That could mean that each page was only minimally relevant, or they got a few pages that were very relevant. It was a little hard to explain how the scoring worked, but I didn't think they did that well. So my summary statement was that they're really no match for using commercial sources. And there was a very heavy overlap in results. I think part of that is because a lot of them were sharing Ink2Me databases and this and that sharing. I'm going to talk about content sharing in a second. Okay, so here's the update, which I did in late April, also before those 3 releases of LawCrawler and LawRunner. 15 engines, so I did a few more engines this time. And I only did 5 topics, and again, that was a time thing. So these are the 5 topics that I searched on. A lawyer referral services in Chicago, racial profiling in New Jersey. You can see that kind of thing. Basic topics somewhat related to law. Okay, and again, I did rerun all the searches on LawCrawler and LawRunner. All right. Here's the results of this update. Now, scores are actually still around the same. If you see that average score, 56 out of 150, relevancy level stayed about the same. So there weren't really great improvements, but that may not be due to the engines. It just may be due to the fact that there isn't that much great substantive material relevant to these legal topics that I chose. And this is a very small-scale study, so it's hard to say. But again, Google sort of was out in front, which I think probably we all would have guessed. And no other really big surprises here, except that LawRunner seems to have slipped a little here. And I don't know, you can't remember probably from the last list, but LawRunner had really sort of cranked on the known item searching. So these scores are reflecting the re-releases. In fact, yeah, let me go forward. Did I write it? I didn't write it. That's okay. So basically, the relevancy stayed about the same. The one thing that I noticed, the biggest trend I noticed in topical searching for law-related stuff, news articles are clogging these result lists. 2 years ago, you never got a news article in your results. I mean, it was sort of considered a type of dynamic content. Search engines had a hard time trying to index these, keeping their indexes fresh. You hit the page and the page would be gone. So that was the biggest trend. I mean, overall, I would say that I considered the relevancy to have slipped. But it completely depends on what you think of getting a news article in your result list. And I scored that as high. Because if there's a news article about a topic, obviously that's relevant to the topic. So it scored high. But that's really not what I want the web for. I mean, I have access to these fancy databases. If I want to data mine through a news database, I'm going to use that more so than the web. So that's just probably a personal preference, whether or not you think you'd want to see news results in your lists. I also thought a couple of those topics were real, and I'd actually done them. And I happened to have known that there were several government reports, especially racial profiling. There was like a GAO report and a Bureau of Justice Statistics report. I mean, there was stuff out there in PDFs, and I suspected that Google would find them, and it didn't. I was surprised. Like, I didn't see the government reports in the result list the way I expected to. So, I don't know. That was just an observation I made. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to take a quick turn and talk just really quickly about LawCrawler. LawCrawler had been, so I'm done with the 2 studies now. So that was it for observations on those. Any questions? Yeah.
Do you think the Google practice of permanently caching pages would skew those statistics in any way? In other words, you can find pages that are no longer
That's
up
true.
there on the Google.
And I did, if it hits a dead page, I was giving those a 0. I think there's tremendous value in Google caching those pages. I mean, for reasons completely separate to relevancy searching. I mean, I think there's been stories about people who actually recovered their websites from Google's cache and stuff. I mean, Google has really done so much for researchers in general, users of the web in general. Their whole PageRank system is just earth-shattering, and I mean, it's such a fantastic product. I don't know, in terms of showing you in your list pages that are not there, it certainly scored high here, so I don't think it hurt it in any way to show you pages that it may only have in its cache. But I don't know if I answered your question. Okay. Yeah?
For the subject searching, how far down the list are you going?
I was only going 10 items down. And it was a little, I mean, scoring that is very subjective, right? But because a lot of times pages that are decent will have a mirror site. Now, if I hit the same exact page from a mirror site, I scored it the same way. If it was a duplicate URL, I said that was a duplicate and it got a 0. It's really tricky to score these, actually. Like, for instance, one thing that was tricky to score is foreign language pages. I mean, AltaVista was giving me some really high-quality foreign language pages, but for the purposes of this, I actually gave them a 0. Now, that is not really fair. Obviously, those pages are directly relevant to my query, and I could kind of tell, you know, just by scanning them, but I did score those low. So this is really too small a study to say too much more, but the one thing I walked away with was that I think relevancy didn't improve overall that much, and that news items are definitely going to be a factor for legal researchers, you know. Okay. There was one more. Yeah.
Did you go into advanced searching at all, or did you stay right on the top?
Default search screens, nothing fancy. In fact, I'll mention, like, LawRunner performs a lot better if you use that little pull down. I'll show you in a second. And I didn't use it. You know, Northern Light, I did not browse their folders. Nothing. I just stuck in a basic search, which is basically what I do at the desk. I just throw something in. I don't really make use of all the advanced features. And actually, that would be an interesting study. I've seen it mentioned a few times that using a lot of the advanced features and longer searches and trying to do the Boolean stuff actually fights the algorithms. Now, I remember reading that a couple of times, and I didn't test that at all. But, I mean, that's an interesting question. Whether or not simple searching, you know, people developing these algorithms are certainly aiming them at consumers. They're not aiming them at researchers. That they want to figure out a relevant result for someone who types in Ford truck. You know, they're not worried about people who are typing in long, involved, esoteric queries for the most part. So, anything else? All right. Okay. So LawCrawler. So they have this big re-release 2 weeks ago. Tremendous improvement. I was doing these studies and I was basically getting nothing back from it. And I thought, well, it must be broken. So I got in touch with them and they said that they were working fast and furious on it, which was nice because LawCrawler has been purchased by West Group. FindLaw has been purchased by West Group. And I thought maybe they were just going to let it slide and give it up. But that's not the case. So it's now powered by Google. And as I said, it's hard for me to really analyze it. I don't have the technical understanding. But basically what it's doing, it's sort of copied the LawRunner model, which is that you type a search in here, you know what? Let's go to it for 1 sec. Looks a little different too. It's nice. The redesign is nice. Okay. This has always bugged me. I don't know why they can't blend this. When you search FindLaw, you can either search their nicely put together directory, their hand-picked directory, or you can search the legal websites. And I don't know why they can't make it so that you pop in your search and you get directory results first, the FindLaw directory results first, and then your web page results, like Yahoo does. They've never done that, and they still haven't done that with this new release. So that's one drawback. But actually now, if you search the directory, the find law, if you just search find law, it works so much better. I don't know if you had an experience trying to search that directory before. You can never find anything. Now it's much better. So basically what's happening when you search it is that if you specify you want to search legal websites and you type in a search, it's directly querying the Google database as far as I can tell, and then sort of behind the scenes it's sort of applying a filter saying, just give me the law or legal pages. You know, it's sort of layering on a behind the scenes Boolean search. Now I don't know that to be exactly true, but I'm pretty sure that's what's happening. And although it's improved in performance, using plain old Google still works better. And I think it's because it's trying to layer on this filter, which may actually be reducing the number of relevant hits that you're getting. What else do I want to say? I mean, we were one of the first professions to have these specialized legal engines. So I'm glad that they exist, and I think they work well, but even though they've improved in general, I would say the major engines are probably outperforming them. That's all I want to say about LawCrawler, just that this new improvement, switching over to Google from AltaVista, is a major improvement, and it's nice to see that it's being kept up, basically. Okay. Well, I've got hand mouse and air mouse. This is too much technology for me right now. Plus, I don't usually use a mic. This is very disconcerting to hear myself as loud.
You're doing fine.
Oh, thank you. See, Diana's supportive. Okay. Okay. So, LawRunner. Now, LawRunner doesn't seem to have as much of a following. I'm actually a big fan of LawRunner. But as I explained, like LawCrawler, it was doing this before, it was directly querying the AltaVista database and layering on a Boolean search. And what I've seen with LawRunner, it seems to me that AltaVista is promoting AltaVista now. LawRunner sort of losing its trade name. Let's see. Okay. Is it working? Okay. I'll show you just a sec. So here's LawRunner, and at the top it still says LawRunner and AltaVista. That was always the banner. But here they're just kind of openly telling you they've switched over to this advanced AltaVista query. When you type in a search, I don't know what to type. I don't know. Okay, now here I could use this pull down. This I considered an advanced feature and I didn't make use of, but it's basically allowing you to specify by domain, by host, you can specify exactly where you want to search. It's really cool. I mean, it works quite well. But just for the purposes of this, I'll show you what happens now. Now, before you'd click search and you'd get your result list. No. Okay. Now they're just dumping you onto this advanced AltaVista search screen, which is a little disconcerting. Plus, it's like sort by Ohio Tax Department. What does that mean? Before, they used to show you what you typed in and the Boolean query that they had added for you. Now the only way, I've hidden the URL up here, but if the URL were showing right now, you'd see that they had indeed kept that kind of law or legal and or whatever. In general, I guess then you have to click search again, and then you get your result list. Now, it does perform quite well. I mean, you'll see, Ohio Department of Taxation. I didn't even type it in phrase, and I didn't type it in correctly probably, but a lot of duplicate hits. But at any rate, it performs quite well. But you'll see, now it really looks as though we're just at AltaVista. So I don't know if maybe LawRunner will eventually be phased out, or I'm not sure. But the improvements that they've made, I think it just reflects the improvements that they've been making at AltaVista in general. AltaVista's really improved their algorithm. And, a point that I didn't mention, I think that AltaVista is very cognizant of the fact that a lot of researchers or people using the web do want to find either a specific item or information relevant to a topic. Because they just did a user survey, and that was one of the first few questions. When you're using the web, are you most often looking for a specific item or information relevant to a query? So I think that AltaVista knows that that's something that people are wanting to do. All right, that was just a quick look at LawRunner. So those are the two major legal engines that I compared, and the upshot is that they've both improved, but still you're probably better off with just plain old Google. Yeah? Okay. I think we've all seen those. I didn't have anything too interesting to say. Okay, this, I think, is the most interesting thing I've seen in a while. Has anyone seen LawMoose? Have you ever heard of this? Oh, you have? Okay, this was new to me. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a regional legal search engine, and I'm going to go to it right now. This is started by Laverne Pritchard, who is a pretty neat person and a pretty techie guy, and who's doing this. So far, I don't know if he's made his money back with it. The model to pay for all this is, I think, going to be a little bit like the paid inclusion thing for legal directories for law firms and things like that. But he's made his own spider. He's handpicked a bunch of Minnesota legal websites, and then he's used his own spider to spider the content of those sites. So when you search here, you're getting information relevant to Minnesota legal stuff. And it works beautifully. You know, just type in anything like I don't know, I did a few, but I should have had a few more sample searches ready. But you know, for example, you don't have to be specific about the state, and you get stuff off the Minnesota law school sites and, you know, legal sites in Minnesota. It works really well. So this is, I point this out, I don't know of too many others. Let's see, that are really a true regional legal search. He says that, you know, basically he's got the technology. He could try to do this for any state, you know, given the commercial incentive to do it. And I think that that would really be a huge change in for legal researchers using the web. Because, you know, the truth of the matter is it is all jurisdictional. So if you had a place where you could kind of search across all these different databases with keywords, actually that's an improvement over what Westlaw and Lexis can do for you. At least here you don't even have to pick a database. That's sort of I thought that was a really neat trend, and I'd like to see more of those pop up. I'd like to see one from Massachusetts. So we'll see. Okay, the only other example that I could really find of a regional legal search engine, I was hoping I could get a few and this would be a trend, but My Texas Bar, they had a few press releases. It's not, as far as I can tell, it's more of a legal portal than a legal search engine, and I can't really show it to you because it's only available to members of the Texas Bar, so I'm not even going to click there. But basically, supposedly, you could go there and search Texas case law, Texas bill tracking, Texas statutes, this and that. So that's kind of neat. So that was just a trend that I'd like to see more of. Okay, where are we now? Okay, so now I'm just going to talk. I have 10 minutes, and I'll leave 10 minutes for questions or so. Okay, trying to analyze how search engines are performing and why is almost completely a thankless task, right? They're all, I mean, there's no way you can really do it. They're all changing so much. One trend is, it was always going on, where they were buying content from each other. So if they're Inc2Me powered, they're really searching the Inc2Me database, but maybe they'll give you a link to direct hit results. Or, you know, Hotbot might be using direct hit automatically, or they were always doing that, and you could kind of track it. But I've found at this point that trying to figure out what is in that result list and from where it is derived is almost impossible, because they're buying news content from Moreover, they're buying paid inclusion stuff from GoTo, and all of this is blended seamlessly into these result lists. So in terms of me trying to analyze why it was that one engine did a little better, you know, it was almost impossible. And to just paint a picture, I was trying to chart it out, actually. I wanted to try to chart out who was getting stuff from where to see the correlation. Okay, I didn't do this, but all I could think was just like, send this guy a Waterford lamp or something. I mean, it's for real. I thought it was a joke, but it's truly, if you see down below, there's actually a legend, and yeah, it's for real. And there have been changes since then, but it just, I think the tricky trend for people who want to actually analyze the performance of these things is that the content is blended so seamlessly. Who's to say why a certain result list performed well for you? I mean, it is still an algorithm. They still decide which results they're going to put first, but it's just, they're very hard to, you know. Plus, as I mentioned on the screen here, they're disappearing. They're having trouble. .com boom is over, and you know, Snap's gone, Go's gone. I liked those two. Let's see, Magellan's gone, Web Crawler's gone, Raging Search is gone, and I'm sure this year we'll probably see another few drop off. Some of the huge portals are having big problems. Alta Vista's got money problems. Excite's got money problems. And those are two big major engines. So it'll be interesting to see if these new commercial mechanisms of staying alive, like pay for play or paid inclusion, if it can keep the diversity in engines alive. There certainly is a lot of consolidation. There are all kinds of statistics that came out a couple of weeks ago saying that basically everybody who uses the web uses a portal, and they're pretty much using these big four, which is AOL, Yahoo, Google, and MSN. So I think as there's more consolidation, I think probably we're going to see a few of the smaller engines drop off the radar. All right, so that said now, some of just the really big trends that I tried to pick out the major trends, and actually the person who's speaking after me, Candy Schwartz, who's certainly much more able than I to talk about these big trends. I wanted to just mention a few that I noticed and speculate as to their importance for legal researchers. Pay to play. I think everybody here probably already knows what that is. Basically, GoTo is the big proponent of this system, and it's taken off. Last time I did these studies, a year and a half ago, was only GoTo that had this pay to play, and now it's just about all of them. And basically it just means that website authors or website owners can bid on a search term. If they have the high bid, they will appear first in the result list when a user types in that particular term. And what they're paying for, they only pay if you click through, but for every click through, GoTo might get, let's say, $1 or $2, or I was trying to figure out the highest bid on the term. Like lawyers was only getting about $2, but that's pretty good money. And GoTo is so successful in selling their results to others because GoTo is paying those other engines. The other engines get a cut for all those click-throughs too. Now the one thing I noticed is that all this pay-to-play stuff, they're all doing it. I didn't really see it as a factor in finding the known items. Certainly, I mean, I didn't think that the commercial sites and the result lists were clogging things up. So I actually don't think it affects us much. A lot of people are arguing that it actually increases relevancy. Well, I think that's a little self-serving. I don't think pay for play actually increases relevancy, but I don't think it really hurts us because the stuff that we're looking for, pretty much no one has bid on these terms. Who's going to bid on, I don't know, Library of Congress? No one. Okay, so that was my theory there. Let's see. News results. Now this is a huge trend. You never got news results really. Very few engines had the capacity to do this. And now there's all these news search engines. There's Moreover, First Headlines, and there's a bunch of them. And they work really well and they're very timely. And I mean they've even made agreements to spider news sites, thousands of these news sites on the web every 15 minutes. So very up-to-date content, but a lot of changeover. I actually don't think this is a good thing because, as I said, that's not really what I want the web for, although probably most researchers do. I don't know how people feel about that, but that might be a point for discussion. So I think that that's a really big trend. I think it's only been available really for the last few months, so it'll be interesting to see if they start to limit the number of news results you can get in a list so that they don't clog results. I don't know what'll happen with that, but so that was one trend I noticed. Okay. Another trend, as I think I belabored this point enough, but searching for known entities, searching by title, searching for a proper name. It used to be that they performed okay, and now they all do it perfectly. So that was one trend that certainly is a big help to us, because that's, my theory is that that's what we're mostly doing, because we know what's out there. We just don't want to, maintain these elaborate lists of bookmarks to locate them. Paid inclusion, I did think that this affected things dramatically. Paid inclusion is a little different for pay to play. Paid inclusion just means that, let's say you're a commercial site, you own a website with a .com URL. If you want to be included, if you want to be, well, there's actually two different things going on there. I kind of oversimplified things basically, but you have to pay to be included in the human-powered directories, like the LookSmart directory. Okay, you have to pay to be looked at. And also, this is very recent, but Ink2Me, I think, is now saying, look, if you want us to index you, if you want us to take a look at you, and you're a .com, you're going to have to pay us. So, I mean, this is an interesting trend. Now, I did notice that in the directory hits, things were much more commercial. I mean, LookSmart couldn't do anything with these searches because everything it was feeding you was like, shop here and buy this. It was real lousy. So I thought that was a sad trend, but probably necessary for these people to stay in business. So, low percentage of the web indexed. Well, since that time, there have been how many studies, and certainly the second Lee and Giles study where they say only 16% of the web is indexed. Those studies were really only addressing the visible web. That's not even the invisible web. That's what's actually out there. Now, that study is old and all this, but I would say that the low percentage of the web indexed by search engines is really not a big deal for us because the type of information that we're looking for is indexed, it is covered, it is findable. And I mean, unless it's very new, but in general, I don't think that trend is necessarily damning for legal researchers. All right, invisible web. That certainly is still a problem. I think everyone out there is doing more stuff with cold fusion. Certainly a lot of law schools are putting stuff in databases that can't be easily found by these search engines. Lots of legal information is sitting in databases that can't be found by these search engines. SEC filings, patents, all kinds of directories. There's lots of stuff out there that these engines just can't find. And the other kinds of stuff they can't find, I don't think it's quite as important. I think it's the stuff that's in the databases that's the big problem for them. And that's still a problem, certainly. I mean, wouldn't it be nicer to just pop in, Coca-Cola 10Q? For that, you still kind of have to go to a specialized site or know to go to an SEC filing site. So that's a problem. I mean, some inroads have been made. Google is now indexing PDFs, which I have gotten in result lists. And I actually suspected when I was doing all these sample searches that I would see lots of PDFs. Like I thought I was going to see PDF clog, but I didn't really. So I don't know, it probably depends on the topic. But so that's a very good thing, that they're able to now start indexing PDF files on the web. As I've already talked about the new stuff on the web. And more of that sort of dynamic content, so huge sites that change big parts of their sites really often. And if they can make an agreement with Ink2Me now, and they'll say, and others too probably, like, I want you to crawl my site on these days, this often, and make sure to crawl especially this portion of my site. I mean, that's sort of a new thing too. And that's a little bit of attacking some of the dynamic content on sites. So invisible web, a trend, probably getting much bigger, and still a problem for legal researchers. What else? News, I've already talked about this. I'm not going to... Actually, I think I timed this actually better than I thought. Okay, so in terms of keeping up to date, those are my three favorites. I think probably most everybody in this room already gets Jeannie Tyburski's Virtual Chase newsletter, the daily alert thing that she does. She does a fantastic job. She monitors the search engine newsletter, Search Engine Showdown, and Search Engine Watch, and she also monitors news sites. She does a tremendous job in keeping us up to date with search. Certainly the two biggies, Danny Sullivan and Greg Notes, do a great service to the community in monitoring what's happening with search. Again, not so much with the legal eye, but certainly they cover stuff with the legal engines. Although, it's interesting. These two specialized engines for law. LawCrawler did that big release. I think the only place they put it out was LawLib. I mean, they didn't really promote it that much. And then LawRunner's gone through this big change, and I haven't seen anybody talking about that. That LawRunner seems to be sort of being taken out of the limelight, and Altavista is promoting itself. So, but they certainly are the place to go to keep up to date with this stuff, and as well as just regular old news sources. And that's about all I wanted to say today. So thank you very much for coming. And here's the URL for the original paper. And I don't think I'll be writing up the results of this new stuff. So, but the slides will be available to you at CALI's site pretty soon. So thanks very much. That's it. Oh, I should say, I guess they want people to evaluate. So there's forms here, and I think that there's supposed to be drop-off boxes at the front of the room. So those are there. All right. Any questions? There's got to be some discussion. Terry.
Diana, this news news thing, is it current news that's you think is junking up, or
Okay,
articles? Or?
yeah, it's interesting. Okay, one, I sort of feel like I don't really care about news results. I would have already searched someplace else, but that's just me. The other thing is, yes, you are getting some dead sites because, like, for instance, on the racial profiling question, there must have been some editorial page that had some fantastic article about racial profiling in New Jersey because just about every engine hit that page. And when I got there, analyzing my results, there was nothing relevant to it. So at some point it was relevant, and it wasn't relevant on that day. So I think you are going to see more dead hits and false hits from those news articles that have moved. I think Moreover actually is taking measures so that it is someplace permanent that you can find it. I don't think when you get it from Moreover that you're seeing it from them on their cache probably. But yeah.
But there are times when you probably, I certainly, some of the topics I search, the newspapers are the only place to
Fine, so, yeah.
get the information, even if it's a report on legal decisions.
Right.
But I suppose so. The good thing would be to have the option of filtering those out. Is that?
Yeah, actually, that would be perfect. I'd like to be able to just limit them out. Exactly. I mean, I didn't talk about this today. It's not necessarily relevant to my talk, but I don't know if you've seen some of these specialized news engines. I mean, it's really neat. They're searching through, say, 1,500 news sites every 15 minutes. I mean, some of them even show you headlines added in the last 2 hours. I mean, it's really cool what you can do. And I wonder how that's sort of impacting, Lexus and Westlaw and other commercial providers, Dow Jones, because there are so many news sites free on the web. CNN, you get CNN hits and all of these result lists everywhere. In fact, though, CNN, you get their CNN Mirror site in London, you get the CNN Mirror in Texas, so that's the duplicate hits is a problem with the news stuff. But I think that'll be an interesting trend to see, if Lexus and Westlaw can keep up with that stuff. Timely news. Yeah.
Two observations. One is that from a teaching perspective, I tend to prefer the news stuff that comes in this way to the stuff I get from the specialized searches because it's better formatted for student.
You mean using the general search engines, or
general search
right?
Engines, it comes out looking like a web page rather than looking like a courier.
Right.
And that's really very useful at some levels, but you want to be able to do it when you can. The other is that there's the opposite series of issues around the sort of invisible internet and the sort of shy internet that's visible, but you sort of have to know where to look, which is, from my perspective, I want to be able to create content that other people can't find.
You do or you don't?
I do. I want my course stuff. I want the stuff that's got my students' CVs on it.
Right.
I want things like that to be immune to the search engines. And that's a balancing thing.
Right.
Because I don't want, if I can avoid it, to be using heavy-duty front ends of passwords.
Right. Yeah, no, it's true what you say. I mean, there are ways of keeping them out. There's a text file, the robots.txt file that you can, put on your site, and you say, don't spider me, I don't want to be spidered. And supposedly most of them pay attention to those. But also password-protected sites, right? That's part of the invisible web, too. Intranets. Lots of great stuff on intranets. That's certainly true at Harvard Law Library. We've got better stuff on our intranet than on our public page, and, that's not findable either.
Some of it depends how it's passworded, because a lot of things password the front end, but if you come back in from behind,
yeah.
And I'm beginning to get hits for things that I thought were behind passwords.
That's interesting.
They don't come out high. They can go away,
Huh.
I stumbled across my own CV the other day.
Well, that's a good thing.
Well, I knew where it was and how it got to it, and they got to it.
Right. No, it is interesting. Like, for instance, we had a discussion recently about working papers, putting them in a public space. Well, maybe these faculty members don't want to field email questions from, Joe, I'm doing my own pro se research out in, Nebraska or whatever. And so, oh my goodness, I didn't mean to disparage Nebraska. That was bad. I just meant far away. Okay, So at any rate, yeah, that is an issue because they do get to everything eventually. After a certain time period, yeah, if it's out there, they're going to find it, and if it's relevant, they'll probably deliver it in the result list. So, yeah. Any other? I don't know how other people feel about the news stuff. I mean, that'll be an interesting trend to watch. So, yeah.
I think the interesting side effect of the new stuff might be if more of the news-oriented sites start building up their material as proper internet material. So they have a news item and they have links to other material, background material.
All right.
That allows you to use a news item as a jump-off point. Like the BBC site does that a lot.
Yeah.
They have links to their own stories. So if you hit one, you get on the train. But they also have links to other sites.
Yeah, that's very true. One thing you said just made me think about, there are all kinds of content deals that are going on too, like, well, it's not so much a deal, but like at MSN. You search MSN, if Encarta's got a good hit for you, you're going to get an Encarta hit. Now that, I think, is really useful, to search some of these, like, you know, somewhat proprietary content stuff. Britannica, that's, I don't know what's happening with Britannica. It looks like it's kind of gone. But you get, yeah, but you do, Diane, no, she's licensed it. But that's going to be interesting. You know, like the whole Northern Light special collections thing, I thought that would really take off and they'd all try to do that. But they haven't. And I don't think Northern Light is that successful with it either. I mean, you know, one of the known items I searched for was that executive order on faith-based and community initiatives. And Special Collections was going to charge me $1.50 or something if I wanted it. And meanwhile, it's completely freely available on the web. So the kind of content stuff, I don't know what will happen. There's a lot of stuff out there that you can pay for elsewhere and get free on the web. But that's another issue. So.
Just a small admission. Robert's text is a good way of keeping spider stuff, but it's not a good way of hiding stuff because it's accessible. So people who are interested in hidden stuff
Okay.
go to Robert's text and look what you have that you don't
Okay. I see. Okay, I didn't know that. It's true. Just get the curious surfers. Anything else? Actually, we pretty good on time. Probably have time for one more question and then lunch. Yeah.
Do any of these search engines care about the discussion groups that are?
Oh, yeah. You know, it's interesting. I got a lot of discussion group hits. Yeah, and some of them are really relevant. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they've been archived. Yeah, so they're picking those up. The archived. Yeah, in fact, be careful what you put out. You know, I send out these ridiculous emails to my RIPS listserv, and they're out there for the world to see. Whether or not they care about them, I don't know, but that they are indexing some of those archives. And who just picked up Usenet? Wasn't that? Yeah, Google's got the whole Usenet archives, the Deja, whatever. Yeah.
Quality control in that context is really scary, and vendors are starting to post things to Usenet groups for the purpose of getting things.
Oh, I never realized that. That is interesting. Yeah, so you can manipulate the system. I mean, yeah.
It's in the guise of a user, so it's like, wow, this is the best thing I ever saw.
Yeah. Well, you know, and sometimes the press releases, that's where they're going, because they're hitting a targeted audience, and they're usually open to send something to. So, yeah, that's an interesting point. I didn't think of that. Anything else? Okay, well, thanks for coming, everybody.